Hey, what's up? Dave with Brazos Barbell. Last week I made a video talking about why you should train your opposite stance deadlift, whether you're deadlift conventional, you should train the sumo and vice versa. So this week I'm going to make the video about conventional deadlifts and accessories that I think are really beneficial. Next week I'll use the sumo deadlifts. I just didn't want the video to be 20-30 minutes long, so breaking it up this way. I mentioned last week in the video that the main limitation, the main factor in conventional deadlifts is almost always going to be back strength. So where sumo, it can be positioning stuff, it can be a little bit more technical, quads, all those kind of things. With the conventional, it's almost always just going to be your erector strength, upper back strength, lower back strength. So today we're going to talk about the specific exercises. I'm not going to go into all the different accessories because you can use the like regular accessories like bodybuilding kind of movements, cable rows and chest supported rows and all those kind of things. You can do things that are a little less specific like good mornings or the Romanian deadlifts and those kind of exercises. But today I just wanted to use variations of the conventional deadlift that I think are going to be really useful for most people to include in their training. And probably my recommendations about when you should go heavy on certain exercises or when they're more suited for more rep work. So I actually filmed all of these today after I did my regular conventional work. I went into the sumo work and I used 485 or 220 kilos for all of these. And I was actually pretty happy with how all of them turned out. So I don't do conventionals very often, but I did a whole lot of them in the past. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons why my sumo is as strong as what it is, because we won't really see a lot of breakdown in my back during any of these. So this is something I've actually stopped doing. I don't really do conventional much anymore because we won't see much breakdown here. So it's probably not a very, very useful tool for me. I have to load it so heavy to get any deviation from my upper back that it just ends up being too fatiguing for me. So I use other exercises. But some of these exercises will be very challenging for people, and the harder the exercise is for you, probably it's more useful to include in your programming. So the first three I'm going to go in order with these, and I think the ones I'll mention first are going to be ones that are more suited for lower rep work, and then the ones later on are more suited for a little bit higher rep work, and I'll talk about the reasons why. So the first one, just standard conventional. Obviously, with any movement, just doing it more will probably lead you to some pretty good results if you focus on technique. Actually practice moving some heaviest loads, but heavy loads that you're kind of walking right on the line between what's taking you out of that good position and what's actually really challenging for you to do. So I wanted to mention that one because sometimes people get really caught up in, quick fixes and what variations can they use to make it happen really, really quickly. But you should never get too far away from just the standard, the regular variation. So do conventional deadlifts if you are a conventional deadlifter, and then you can start adding in the rest of these. The one that I've actually seen to be most beneficial for a ton of people recently, I haven't used this one a whole lot in the past, but recently I've been doing, generally it's going to be heavy doubles with a lot of my conventional deadlifters, and it seems that everybody's benefited greatly from them, is a paused Dimmel deadlift or Dimmel deadlift. I'm going to say Dimmel. I don't really know exactly what the proper pronunciation is, so I'm calling it Dimmel. But the paused Dimmel deadlift, I've seen this one before. I actually first saw it a while back with some West Side guys talking about how it was supposed to increase strength in your hips or lockout strength, and I actually totally disagree with that. I don't think that hip strength is ever the limitation. If you have trouble at lockout, it's almost always going to be your back strength. So when I'm using this one, I'm using it to really try to challenge your erector strength and that position down at the bottom. So when I'm using it with doubles, we're pulling it from the floor, and then we control it down to what would be in between the knee and the starting position and pausing there for a second or two and coming back up. So that second rep is really where most of the work is doing. When I'm saying a double, I'm saying there's going to be one pause there. I think when we're doing something like this, if we start doing a whole lot of reps, it ends up on two fronts. It's not going to be heavy enough for you to really have to fight that hard on those early reps, so they're kind of wasted. I don't really see the value in doing something like this for a whole lot of reps when it's just easy to cheat and get out of position. But if we do it really heavy, then it really makes you fight in that position that most people are losing their posture. So in that little mid-range, or right below the knee, most people are losing that back strength. And that's really what we're trying to target. So we generally want to go right below where people are missing, make that position strong, and then that second rep is really where a lot of the work is. I'm writing this one for what I'm doing now is a top double followed by 2 to 3 working doubles, and progressing those from week to week, followed by just regular conventional sets. And it seemed to be really effective for just about everybody. So I don't usually like saying something is going to be a universal fix, but just recently I've used it with almost all my conventional deadlifters with success from everybody. So I think that's probably the first one that people should include in their programming. The next one that I'd say is probably pretty similar would just be a tempo deadlift. So when with most tempo work, we're emphasizing the controlled eccentric. And in this case, the eccentric, the movement for the deadlift is just going to be the lowering phase. So all of these are emphasizing back strength. So on the way down with these, I'm writing them for 5-6 second tempos. And usually how I'm writing these is a single followed by a triple. That's been my program selection for the tempo deadlifts, just because I feel like like we said, we need the heavy overload work on that first single, but repetitive singles in that case I think can get a little tricky pretty quickly. So then I've moved into do the heavy single, make them work really hard on that, and then we end up getting a few good reps getting to hold that back position. It's much easier to hold your back position on the way down than it is on the way up. So really it's just all about feeling that posture. So these are, I think, one of the easier ones to get going with. If you have trouble with your back strength, have trouble feeling where you're supposed to be, as long as you can hinge well. I mentioned that in the last video. If you can hinge well, or the top-down setup, if you haven't seen that one, we're talking about hinging, you need to be able to hinge well. So if we can hinge well, we can do any of these. So if you can hinge well, then we can do the tempo deadlifts, and these can be really, really effective. And then from those, probably moving into the Dimmel deadlifts, and then all of those together can make you a whole lot more effective. The next one is going to be the touch and go deadlift. This is where I start getting into more of the higher reps. So I commonly use this one kind of in a transitionary period, just getting in some volume, some general back work, but I really don't like getting these heavy. The touch and go, just a light touch on the floor, we're almost thinking like a RDL kind of movement where we're just getting reps. So we're getting I use it mostly for newer lifters, getting them to feel what that back position is like in the first place. So I'm using these for sets of 5. I sometimes go up to sets of 10, but they're really light, like 60% for sets of 10. And the main goal is just finding them a good, nice position to go up and down, feel that back through the whole movement, light touch on the floor, and feel what it feels like to break the floor in a good position. So I actually use these more commonly with newer lifters, mostly because they don't have a good idea of what the back position should feel like. So I feel like a lot of reps in that good position, as long as they're low load. I don't like using those higher intensity ones because they have a high probability of getting out of position, and then it's just not going to be effective. So I use the touch and go deadlifts to build the back strength, and I use them generally in transitionary periods, kind of off-seasonist periods, but I'm not using them in conjunction, especially in higher reps with some of these harder ones. So we have to be really careful with that one. But 3-4 sets of 10 at 60% can be a good introduction to the conventional deadlifts, as long as we're not pushing them too hard. And then as soon as we're comfortable with the fact that they're holding a good posture, we may start putting in some of the other ones. The last one is probably going to be the most general, but it may be the best for targeting specific back strength and not so much conventional deadlift strength. So the whole video is about whether you should train the opposite stance. Those first 3, and really the first 2, I guess 3 including the regular straight conventional, the first ones we mentioned were all really, really close variations of the conventional deadlift. The last one is just going to be the block deadlift. So this one takes your legs out of movement. For most people, this one is substantially harder. If you're missing at your lockout, or if you're missing around your knees, if you're not missing off the floor, blocks are usually harder for most people. So if my goal is to target the lifter's back, I usually use this one because it takes their legs out of it, and it's all going to be back strength as far as the limitation. So just a small block, an inch or 2 is usually plenty. Higher than that, and it doesn't work the same. So we're still wanting to be in that good hinge pattern. So a small block, and then from there it's just going to be the nice hinge, almost like an RDL, but you shouldn't get a lot of drive from the floor. And then it's all going to be just back strength. I use those for a little bit higher reps, but again, they need to be challenging. I don't normally go sets of 10 or so with those. it's more like 4 sets of 5 with a 7-ish RPE, and then, the last 1 or 2 are starting to challenge the back, take a little out of position. So when people say, I feel it all in my back, and I'd say, well, that's exactly what we're trying to go for. Just because you feel something in your back isn't it's not a bad thing, especially when we're trying to go after that back strength. So those are the primary movements that I use for making, if you're a conventional deadlifter, the first few are ones that I think are the most important, especially because we're challenging positional strength. The ones later in the end, we're just talking about general back strength. And so those can probably work well for newer lifters, or if we're just training the general movement pattern that people that sumo lifters don't get a whole lot of. I don't like specifically the deficit deadlift is not one that I like, for the same reason that I talked about the block deadlift being a lot more challenging on the lifter's back. I feel like the deficit deadlift, when you're standing on a block instead of the plates on the block, people usually think that it's going to be something that's going to make you stronger off the floor, or it's going to make you more, give you more speed off the floor, something like that. I feel it does the opposite. It changes your position too much, and it teaches you that you're going to have more ability to use your legs than you really are. So especially with a conventional deadlift, most people aren't able to get a lot of quads in. But if I stand on a plate or a block, I'm able to get my legs in a whole lot more, and I actually deadlift at least the same, if not slightly more, when I'm doing a conventional deadlift from a block than I do from the floor. So I've never felt like that's a good variation for me. I miss off the floor for conventional, and so you would think that the thing that I would need to do would be do deficits, and it hasn't ever worked. It's actually made me worse in the short term because the pull does not feel similar, and I've noticed that with other people. And then a lot of times people don't tolerate it well at all. If you're going that extra range of motion, it can be really challenging on people's backs. So that was the conventional ones. Hopefully that video was helpful. Next week we'll talk about the sumo deadlift. Mostly there it's going to be the positional strength rather than general back strength, but we'll go into ways that we can really address that. So hopefully this video was helpful. I'm going to be, like I said, I'm making more videos about my training. I got some good feedback from that one, so keep asking me questions about what I'm doing and how I'm including those kind of things, and hopefully we'll be putting out some good content for you guys. So thanks for watching, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.